So this latest episode of the Misfit of Demon King Academy was a very intriguing episode in more ways than one. Of course, I think the most interesting thing that people will probably bring up with this episode is the later portion, the last 5 minutes or so, when basically the Hero Academy decides to cheat their way to victory and nearly kill every single one of the third years who were participating in round 1, and if it wasn't for Anno saving them, they would have died in this evil scumbag of a teacher who makes the previous evil scumbag of a teacher look like a saint in comparison. That's a really interesting development, but honestly, I think my favorite part of this entire ordeal is what they're able to do with the idea of the hierarchy of the nobles and the half-bloods and just how it causes this big divide, and how usually when you see someone who tries to talk down to Annos, in the case of this third year who is basically leading round 1, I thought I was really gonna hate this guy, but honestly, after seeing the conclusion of this episode and the setup for next week, which looks insane because, you know, the horrible scumbag teacher number 2 wants to cancel it because, oh, they cheated, he was able to destroy the lake even though I cheated my way to victory by using holy water, which is drugs to us where it's poison to them. I love how they're able to set up something that feels like it's actually more honor-based than anything, that even though the other scummy people who use tactics that were unruly, they actually have this desire to fight someone strong like Annos. And what I really like is how they're able to portray this system, because we know since Annos died and since he's been reincarnated, history has been changed, and the generational thing of basically saying this is how it is and this is how the hierarchy works, it's understandable why people wouldn't just immediately blindly trust Annos, even if he has this insane power. Everything that he's saying is contradictory to what they're being taught and basically everything like that. So it's nice to have someone who doesn't really feel like he's trying to be buddies with him because he saved his life, but rather is sticking true to what his character is. He's saying, you know, I never want to say this, but unfortunately I have to admit that I wish I had your power in certain cases, and he's not someone who just blindly accepts his help, and even though people will probably write him off as someone who's very arrogant and cliche, I think you need characters like him who have grown up in a world where people like Annos are not the Demon King. That's the complete opposite. And, you know, the whole idea of this hierarchy, the royals and the people who are half-bloods and things like that, even though it's a very stereotypical kind of like plotline where you have this almost like divide, a racism sort of divide because they're not as pure as the other. The way they're handling it and the way Annos is presenting his beliefs, it feels really intriguing because he's not the type of person who gets offended that someone doesn't blindly follow him, but rather, as he says as he's healing this guy, he actually respects his resolve. And that's what I really like, is when an author writes his character to not basically follow the trends, where usually if you had a powerful, overpowered character like Annos who can one-shot everyone in his way, he would basically prove to him why he has to follow him and why he's an idiot, or he would just mock him. But Annos is someone who invokes confidence, and one thing I've said since pretty much the very beginning is you understand why people follow his lead. He's not someone who just gets to where he is because he's a powerful demon lord, but rather what he says and what he does, it invokes confidence. And you can really see the gears are starting to turn with people who you probably thought would never follow his lead. Now we're starting to recognize that maybe even if they don't believe it by a logical sense, an emotional one is saying that they might need to follow this man as he probably is their demon lord in one way or another. And it's really nice how they're able to present that idea and belief system, especially in a world that is basically so twisted and corrupt. I mean, who would have thought the hero side of an academy would have more scummy people than the demon side? This world is flip-floppy, but I guess when you start the anime off with a hero and a demon working together to save the world, I guess anything is possible, especially considering history has been altered and just kind of warped beyond belief. I really like the action side of this episode, even though it wasn't overly relevant. It was only like 5 or 6 minutes, give or take. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was interesting having a water scale battle, because usually you're used to them fighting on land and seeing how the magic would work. But with the really interesting visual directing, they're able to portray a lot of the spells that we're used to seeing, like when they build their castles and things like that, the lasers, but how they had this like water effect over it. It actually looked like they were swimming and were underwater. And it was a really interesting kind of turn of events, because usually when you're kind of saying, oh, people are going to do this in a mock battle, they're going to build this castle, they're going to try to capture the others or things like that, it just feels like it's more of the same. And not only did they on a visual level change it up by putting them underwater, they didn't let Annos fight in round 1. Usually what I would think would happen, and I firmly knew what was going to happen, at least that's how I felt, Annos was going to prove that he was the best and that he would do it once again, because I mean, you start the episode off with him basically breaking the curse where people were limiting the other demons. Of course, when Anos does it, becomes a monstrosity Godzilla-like, but still, like, that's kind of what I thought they were going for, is that he would prove once again why he needs to do it and everyone else is incompetent to him. But no, he actually quickly backed down. He was like, you know what? You got spunk, you got spice, go ahead, do what you want to do. And even though he didn't win, I feel like if the situation wasn't a warped one, something where they weren't being cheated, they weren't being poisoned, and everything was on even playing fields, I guarantee you this guy would have won. I feel like he's actually a confident leader. Yeah, he has his arrogance, but I mean, he definitely has his own pride, and I think over time, maybe very quickly, or maybe in a season 2 if we get it, he's going to be someone who's going to look at Anos with more respect, as if maybe he was misguided, and I feel like he's the type of character who could admit his mistakes, or he'll go the route of being a little tsundere, but clearly enjoying his company, and even get some pretty cute moments with our boy, who is, I mean, I was like, okay, I guess it's not only Anos who's going to be getting some love interest, especially if you're kicking it off by saying, oh, he's giving a necklace, which is basically like almost a marriage proposal. There's so many times where people are putting rings on people's fingers or giving a necklace, which is basically an engagement promise. But it's nice to have those more simple moments where it does show that there is this little humility, while also probably doing some foreshadowing where there may be more than one character who's been reincarnated, and maybe history is starting to repeat itself, which I'm really intrigued by. It's kind of crazy to feel like we're episode 10 of season 1, but it feels like we're at season 3 of a lot of these shows. And that's not because the pacing's too fast, it's actually just because the pacing's normal for once. Usually you would get to this point by season 3 in most of these adaptations because they drag it out just so they can milk it for all it's worth and do the bare minimum amount of work. But here it feels like everything's being touched upon in a character way, so we actually understand their motivations, and characters who you might want to be infuriated by, they feel like they're well written enough that you understand why they're acting in that way, especially if history has been altered in such a way to make everyone feel like there's this hierarchy and class system, and that the Demon Lord is the complete opposite to Anos, and apparently cheating heroes is the absolute way that you should follow. I'm really interested though by the cliffhanger, because they do show that one girl in a very ominous way and how they are talking about using their weapon, and it doesn't look like she wants to be that weapon, especially with how the episode kicks off and then ends. So there's a lot that they can do with this episode, and just, you know, going forward with the final 3, because this is going to be a 13 episode season if I'm not mistaken. But this was great. There was a lot of humility in this episode while also having a lot of arrogance, and it's interesting how the arrogance definitely got crushed, especially with that fiery ball of doom at the very end. That was totally badass, and I love seeing it, but it's never really a question of how OP Anos is going to be. It's a matter of what's he going to do in order to win, because you know he's always going to win, but like the show has proved, they know how to take that OP formula and continuously make it fresh, because you know even if he's always going to win, there's going to be some hardship for the other characters and even himself at times. Of course, as always, let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? And where do you think I might go next week? If you enjoyed the video, of course, I would like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.